My old coworker knew way too much about me. Hello, welcome to the basement. This is where we do creepy things. It's a new channel, subscribe to it. Let's get into it. This is the story of a coworker I had a long time ago, so I can look back on it and laugh now, but at the time it was really distressing for me. To give some context, every summer I would do some temp work for the company where my dad worked. It was an education company, so they always needed temp workers around July, August time for all of the exam remarks that they had come in. It was a data entry work, but it suited me fine and it meant I could earn a little extra cash while I was at university. I did this every summer from when I was 19 right through to when I was 23, and then I got another job at the same company for a bit after I graduated, but we'll get to that later. For now, all you need to know is that I was a reasonably familiar face there, and everyone knew I was my dad's daughter. But what could go wrong? The main downside of working there was that I'd clock off work at 5 p.m., but I'd have to wait for my dad to finish work since he was the head of an entire department, so he'd end up staying a bit longer. Every day I'd bring a book with me and sit in this little foyer area between his department and the department where I worked, since it had the most comfortable chairs. What were you reading? I must have been 22 years old when this happened because it was the penultimate summer that I worked there. I had just had my hair cut short for the first time in my life, and I'd had it dyed red as well. I was sitting on these couches reading when all of a sudden this guy approaches me. Let's call him Leon. He tells me that he works in my dad's department and he thought he'd come introduce himself. This was a pretty common occurrence for me, and I was aware of this guy. He was young and decent looking, so a few of the women in my department had a crush on him. I was dating someone at the time, though, and I had never actually seen him in person, but I could see what they saw in him. We got to chatting, and he mentioned that I'd changed my hair, so I told him about cutting it short, and he cut me off mid-sentence. This is where it started to get weird. He said, "No, it was brown, and you didn't have a fringe. Then you went through that phase of curling it. Then you put the fringe it and dyed it red. After that, you dyed it purple. Now you've had it cut short and dyed it back to red." This guy I had just met was describing over 2 years' worth of hairstyle changes that I'd had. I felt creeped out. But he seemed like a nice enough guy, and I guess I had worked at the company throughout that entire time, so it was reasonable to assume that he'd noticed me before. I guess. But you said you'd never seen him before. In person. That should have been the first red flag. He's nodding. He asked me if I had Facebook, and I told him that I did, so he said he would add me. That seemed pretty normal, but then, after he'd sent the friend request, he asked me to get my phone out so he could watch me accept the friend request. That is not normal. I'm British, and it's therefore impossible for me to be impolite. Really. So I got my phone out and showed him that I had accepted it. I thought that might calm him down. Bear in mind, he wasn't a bad-looking guy, so I felt a bit flattered at this point that he was so keen on me. That sense of flattery dissolved real fast. After the Facebook thing, he kept asking me if I had MSN, and I told him that I didn't. MSN? What year was this? This was many, many moons ago. I swear, throughout this conversation he asked me if I had MSN about 4 times. Then, the final time he asked, he was like, "Please, can you get MSN so we can chat after work?" It was like he had something really urgent he wanted to tell me, but I had only just met this person. I kind of laughed and said about how I hadn't used MSN since I was a teenager without necessarily rejecting him. Then he said something like, "Well, if you don't have MSN, then do you have Skype?" This seemed like the perfect opportunity to bring up my boyfriend, who was a foreign student and went back to his home country during the summer. He was the only person I spoke to on Skype. I said to Leon about how I didn't have my own Skype account, but I used my dad's Skype account to talk to my boyfriend. I really thought this might ward him off. I was wrong. Without missing a beat, he said, "Can you please just get your own Skype account so we can video chat after work?" He said it like I was somehow inconveniencing him, like this was something we'd agreed to do months ago or something. I had no idea how to react, so I just sort of smiled and laughed. Thank the heavens, someone from my dad's department walked past at that moment and was like, "Leon, aren't you meant to be at your desk?" He scurried off pretty quick after that, but not before reminding me to get my own Skype account and send him the details. I told my dad about the whole exchange in the car ride home, but all he said was that Leon was very friendly and a lot of the women in this department liked him, so maybe I had just misunderstood the situation. I thought he was probably right, so I tried not to let it bother me. That was not normal flirtation, though. That did not sound like normal flirtation. Later that evening, however, I was on my computer doing university work when a message popped up on my Facebook. It was Leon. All the message said was, "We like the same movies." I don't know what it was, but something about this message freaked me out so much. I decided not to respond and logged off Facebook, hoping that he wouldn't notice I'd been online. The next day, after work, I sat in my usual spot when Leon comes over to me. His face was like thunder. At first, I thought he was just having a bad day and was walking through the hallway, but my heart dropped when I realized he was walking directly towards me. "Why didn't you respond to my Facebook message?" I was stunned. How was I supposed to respond to that? Who says stuff like that in real life? Lucky for me, I didn't have an opportunity to respond because he started off on his tirade. I'm not even kidding. He started listing all of the movies we had in common that he had seen on my Facebook profile. Batman, The Dark Knight, Watchmen, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Fight Club. I just sat there watching him reel off all these film titles. Once he was finished, all he said was, "It's okay, I forgive you," and then walked off back to his department. Over the next couple of weeks, he came in and found me in my spot every day and talked at me from the moment I sat down to the moment my dad came to get me. I don't remember many of the other exchanges, but I do remember distinctly one day pretending to pick my nose when I saw him coming to see if it would put him off. I'm not going to demonstrate. I got to the point where I'd get so stressed after work that I'd go and hide in the toilets for as long as I could, but the women I worked with started to notice and think I was weird. I feel the need to interject and specify that this person is British, so they're not in a toilet. They're in a restroom. Yes, I know. I'll get on with the story. Eventually, I broached the subject with my dad, and he gave me his car keys after my shift so that I could go hide out in his car rather than in the building. So I'm camped out in his car, and I'm still feeling quite tense, but after about 20 minutes, I start to feel at ease. Surely he won't come looking for me out here. Wrong. I look over at the main entrance, and my heart drops. He's coming out of the door, and he's scrutinizing all of the cars. I sank down as far as possible into my seat, but I wasn't fast enough, and he saw me. He comes rushing off and starts tapping on the glass, so I open the door and ask him what's up. "I didn't see you in your usual spot, but luckily, name of doorman, told me he saw you come out here. Why are you in your dad's car?" Again, what are you supposed to say to that? I have several responses, all of which I would need to censor, but I think you can imagine where I'm going with that. I told him I had a headache, so I'd come out to the car to take some paracetamol and see if I could get some sleep. At least he respected that, because he told me to feel better and then left me alone. I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that I was only going to be working there for a few more days before I had to go back to university. I told my dad about the car incident, and he gave Leon a talking to the next day. Leon would still come find me in the foyer, but he'd only talk to me for a few minutes in passing before leaving me alone. It was a big relief. Still, can he not just leave well enough alone? Would that be so much to ask? On my last day at work there, I was fully expecting him to do something crazy, but he didn't even come to chat with me that day. I left the office and thought I would never see him again. You thought you would never see him again? I found out he was fired not long after I left the company that year because he kept coming into work late and then spent most of his time at work chatting with his coworkers, and me, apparently. Fast forward to January of 2014, and I was preparing to move to China for a position teaching English. I'd graduated from university and was working at the same company, but this time in a semi-permanent capacity. It was my last day at work, so I received quite a few gifts and some fuss from my coworkers. It was about 10 a.m. when who should I see walk through the door but Leon. He had been hired as a temp to do the job that I had done for so many years. As soon as he walked through the door, he saw me, and this flash of recognition crossed his face. I wanted to slide under my desk and die. He came walking over to me and was all smiles, asking about how I was and what I was still doing at the company. It was at this point that one of my coworkers mentioned about how I was off to China soon. Is he going to follow you to China? No. Could he be followed? That's some serious devotion. Leon seized on that and started talking about his friend who was also interested in teaching English as a foreign language. His interest seemed genuine, so I got to talking about how I got my TEFL certification, who I got it through, and what company I was going to be working for out in China, etc. Why did you tell him all of these things? You should not have told him these things. We chatted for about 20 minutes, and he wrote down some details for his friend, then went off to work. At the end of the day, I was packing all of my stuff to leave, and a few of my coworkers were coming over to say their goodbyes. Don't get me wrong, the Leon incident aside, I had a wonderful time working at that company and made a lot of great friends. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Leon approaching, but I think, what's the harm? He says goodbye and wishes me luck on my new adventure. Then, as I'm literally walking out the door of the department, I hear him call out, "See you in China!" For the first 2 weeks of my teacher training over there, I was like a hawk, keeping a constant lookout for this guy. He never did follow me out to China, but it still remains one of the creepiest encounters of my life. I'm going to have to agree with that sentiment. Exceptionally creepy. To all of you lovely human beings out there who are watching this channel, if you enjoy what I'm doing here in the basement, please do subscribe to this brand new channel. And if you want to see more of me reading stories and playing the piano, you can also subscribe to Piano Man Has No Plan, which is the original parent channel to this thing that we've created here in the basement. Have a lovely evening.